core message is if you're a fintech company and you're not already building with stablecoins, start now, or you'll be too late. All of your peers are building, and there's a risk of getting stuck with a non-competitive product if you're unable to move fast enough, especially if you're working on embedded finance, on cross-border payments, or any other adjacent part of fintech. And if you want to do so, then we're here to help accelerate that so that you can move faster.
You're listening to Season 6 of Stableminded, powered by Rain. Rain helps financial teams build and manage stablecoin-powered card programs. With a single API, Rain lets you issue branded cards and unlock new revenue. With Rain, users can move, store, and spend stablecoins instantly and compliantly in over 150 countries. Join us this season to explore how Visa, Crossmint, Yellow Card, Arculus, and the state of Wyoming are embedding stablecoin flows into their business. You can learn more at rain.xyz. Rodri, thank you so much for joining. How's it going?
Good, things are great. Survived Money 2020.
You did. You're back. How was the conference? What was the, have you been there before? What was the sentiment like compared to maybe other years or other conferences you've been to lately?
Yeah. So Money 2020 is obviously a conference that it's primarily targets, fintechs, financial institutions, a lot of whom are pretty traditional companies. I think this year, despite the conversation was very large share stablecoin related, both in terms of like panels and so on, but also just like in informal conversations with everyone. Obviously, we're biased because we do stablecoin infrastructure, so everyone wants to talk to us about stablecoins. Nonetheless, I think that it's clear that stablecoins have penetrated the entire financial market and that there's an insane amount of FOMO with all of the announcements of every single major brand across the different niches of fintech doing things. And so everyone wants to learn. Everyone is feeling like they're being left behind. And so things are moving very quickly, as you can see, both in M&A, in every single piece of
M&A and potential M&A, how much of this is real, how much of this is fake. Okay, so backing up as we kick off here, I'm really excited for this conversation because Crossmint has been in the building in this space for many, many years. And I think you guys you've had different seasons of the journey. You've built and focused on different things. Why don't we start high level around the macro journey so far, the different, seasons that you've taken the business in and how you and your role as well as you introduce yourself would be great. But yeah, I think uniquely about Crossmint, I think you've been building in a bunch of different areas. So I'd love to give those who are meeting you for the first time a bit of the track record and a bit of the seasons of the business that you guys have been through.
Yeah, sure. Rodri, originally from Spain, probably people will be able to guess by my accent. My background is in financial services mostly. So engineer by training, worked at McKinsey & Company, helping mostly big financial institutions with digital strategy, worked on startups and VCs, came to the US 6 years ago for graduate school, ended up dropping out of the Stanford MBA and Harvard MBA to become a monk. Then I joined the monastery. I started selling NFTs from the monastery, and one thing led to another. Many things on the way we can chat about other day. Ended up starting the company with my co-founder, Alfonso, about 4 years ago. What we do is we're a stablecoin platform. So we provide infrastructure to fintechs and enterprises to integrate stablecoins on their flows, all in one suite. And we abstract away all of the complexity of building with stablecoins. So all we do are simple Web2 APIs. Teams generally do not need to have any blockchain engineers or team, and helps them move much faster. We also help them consolidate vendors by providing that all-in-one solution. So I can chat more about use cases later, but like MoneyGram, for example, we were able to help them go live from zero to something live in production in like 2 months with 1.5 engineers on their side. And we do that by being that, like single vendor of sorts that does everything from stablecoin orchestration and money movement, on and off ramps, wallet infrastructure, both treasury and embedded wallets on the app. We abstract all of the compliance, AML, travel rule, and so on are natively embedded on the APIs. You don't need RPCs. You don't need to worry about anything. You just get a Web2 API that you can use to do any sort of like action that you may need. And so that's at a high level who we are.
And give us a sense. So as we've entered into this current moment as it stands today, stablecoins are really top of mind, agentic commerce and where that space is going. You guys seem really positioned for success there, which we can talk about. I'm excited to double click into MoneyGram, and that launch is absolutely massive. Give us a sense of how you guys have arrived at the stablecoin conversation, and specifically in, when I was really getting to know Crossmint, for example, maybe a couple of years ago now, I was thinking through the tech that you guys were building around NFT marketplaces, on ramps, wallets, like things like that. Talk a little back up a little bit and what you've built to make what is now possible for things like stablecoins, and also just how it's evolved a little bit in your minds as you guys have built in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So we build developer infrastructure. And 4 years ago, when we started the company, no one was thinking about stablecoins, except for a couple of people, Circle, Dai, and a couple others. And what the market was demanding at the time was NFTs. And so we started working a lot with enterprises, and the use cases that at the time the market wanted were like loyalty, identity, and things like that. Obviously, also all of the, pictures of monkeys, etc. And so we started by building our own NFTs. Then we realized there's so much friction. Let's build a company, making it easier to build on chain. And so we started solving for those use cases. And then over time, as the industry evolved, and more stablecoin use cases started to appear, we sort of like applied the same technology that we were using to abstract away all of the crypto from those builders and users for those NFT use cases, also for stablecoins. And so it's very natural progression, same technology, just applied to a different use case. And so about probably like 2.5 years ago or so, stablecoin use cases started to take off a little bit more. And so we started to divert most of our resources and attention then. And then about 1.5 years ago, we foresaw the emergence of agentic finance. And so we acquired the founders of two startups and started building the team. We started to build the tech to tap into that new wave that now it's coming. And we're sort of like getting well positioned to tap into and win. And so right now, those are like the two focuses of the company, both stablecoins and agentic finance. To a big extent, a lot of it is all like the same infra, but adapted to, in the case of agentic finance, to those use cases that allow agents to hold funds, to move money, to make payments. And yeah, happy to chat more about what that actually looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting because essentially what you've been building has never changed in some ways. Like the infrastructure to hold, move, onboard, transact, custody, build with tokenized products or tokenized assets. Like the flavor has changed, the focus has changed, but really the underlying capabilities that are needed are sort of similar. I love the evolution from a stablecoin focus a couple years ago, and still a couple years ago is still very early in the infrastructure play still. How now agentic commerce and stablecoins exponentially can accelerate that world. And I do agree, as we were discussing before we started, this conversation is really interesting. I think for us as a company, we're excited to cover it more and unpack it more. There's, I think, a lot of misunderstanding around it. Maybe we touch on that a little bit. 2 years ago, what was the difference of what got you specifically interested in stablecoins? Like what was the thing at that point, and how would you compare it or contrast it to today, and maybe a similar spark with agentic commerce and why that's interesting for you? You guys have always seemed to be looking around corners effectively as you guys have built.
Yeah, I think with stablecoins, it just became very obvious. Like generally, it's a better form of money. It's global, it's instant, it is composable. It allows companies to build global financial products in days, serving users from many markets, what would otherwise take many years to be able to achieve through orchestrating many different vendors, putting together all of these different pieces and getting all of the regulations in place across all the world. Like today, you can go and you can build a FinTech app that just works and has everything that Revolut has in like a week. And that is so, it accelerates the pace of innovation to a place that I think, we've never seen before. People used to say last decade is that like every company is a fintech company. And obviously, that revolution that gave birth to Revolut, Chime, and all these companies was fascinating. But now it's when truly like every company can be a fintech company, because there's so many things that before you could only do if you had like some minimum amount of capital, some amount of resources, and it would take a long time. Today you can do like so much so quickly, thanks to stablecoins. And then the second thing is the impact on people in emerging markets and around the world who before did not have access to financial services, that now you can give them very sophisticated products, allow them to tap into currencies that are stable, that don't depreciate, that don't devaluate, protect against inflation, be able to, invest in better products, be able to reduce the cost of those like cross-border payments. If you're someone in, Colombia or, somewhere in Africa and you have relatives in the US and they're sending you money and you have to pay like 7%, the tax on the economy is to those who need it most is terrible. For merchants too, like let's say you're a merchant, you're in, a restaurant in the US and you have like 5% margins and 3% of your revenue is going to the payment processor, kind of sucks. And like now for the first time, you can have like, peer-to-peer payments where you can basically like double the profit of a lot of these low margin businesses overnight. The incentives are there for these to continue to accelerate at a pace that is pretty unprecedented. And that gets even better now with agentic finance. I think the system, the financial system basically for commerce has many different components on the value chain. Adapting them all to be able to be used by agents will take a really long time. Let's say that, you're a user, you're talking to an LLM, you want to buy something from a third-party place, you put your credit card, the agent tries to buy. It stumbles upon, reCAPTCHA, which was sort of like my co-founder Alfonso, he was the inventor of the I'm not a robot reCAPTCHA. So now we're trying to help bypass some of those things from the other side. Let's say there's a chargeback. Who's responsible for the chargeback? Is it the merchant? Is it the agent company? Is it the user? There's like all these things that we have to figure out. You have so many different players on the payment stack that are incentivized to prevent fraud among everything else. That will just take a very long time. And stablecoins are just a better technology to solve that problem. We have a product that works today. It's an API that you can use to buy anything from the internet. You can buy things from Amazon, from Shopify, flights, and combined with the other products, basically allows you to fund the agent and allow them to operate autonomously and make purchases for you. And so we think that the industry is still obviously in the early beginnings, pretty mature, but all of the frameworks are getting developed. And we think that in the next, it's very hard to predict, but say 6, 9, 12 months, it's going to absolutely explode. And it's going to do so at a speed that is a combination of crypto and AI together, which is scary.
What do you think are the things, you guys have been thinking about agentic commerce, X402, these things that are now in the last couple days or weeks have really become top of mind for some teams and some builders. And I'm seeing a lot of attention and excitement around this in the really short-term, near-term past. But you guys have been thinking about this for years. You've been thinking about agents and the relationship between agents and payments. What would you say is the most, something that might be misunderstood or something that you've learned along the way that you would want to share with someone who's just now maybe looking into this for the first time? What are some wisdom or some learnings that you guys have picked up around what might be misconceptions or maybe things that would help accelerate understanding for those just getting started?
Yeah, I think in the last 4 years, we have seen a lot in crypto. Many different use cases, many different things take off, and the whole cycle of adoption. I think that generally what gives birth to these explosions of activity and emergence of new use cases is a small group of people who are able to really nail down a new use case that before the world didn't know was possible. They do it in a way that they build a product that has like, good UX, is well marketed, and that then becomes an inspiration for everyone else to follow. In this industry that it's so fashion driven, and I think the moment you have one of those and it works, suddenly you have like 300 companies the next day building the same thing. And I feel like the thing with agentic finance is that even though a lot of the tech is there, there's still a lot of things that have to be figured out. There still haven't been like many killer teams that have actually built consumer products that work well. And so I think for the audience, if there's any aspiring entrepreneur, the opportunity is absolutely insane. And you can become the first one to crack some of these different use cases that now become possible with agentic finance. So go explore, do something with care, do it with love, and become a pioneer of a new use case. You're going to crush it. There's so many opportunities. It's insane.
If you weren't building, Rodri, personally, if you weren't building the infrastructure stack, and maybe you guys are thinking about this, maybe I'm asking this incorrectly and framing it wrong, but there are, I think, a lot of companies who've been in the infrastructure game who are now starting to do things first-party application-wise to bring their tech to life. Thinking about Noble right now, the stablecoin issuer, and they're messing around with some point-of-sale terminal and things like this. But how would you, if you weren't building Crossmint and you knew what was possible when it came to agentic commerce in the next 12 months, like short term? Because you're right, like this is a long journey. There's a lot of hype. What would you build short term? Like, what do you think is a good use case just to give people, or maybe a couple, just to help people understand what's now possible in your mind?
Yeah, we don't do consumer. We only do infrastructure, but have quite a few ideas. So depends. Obviously, it depends a bit on the personality of the founder, right? Do you want to go tackle a humongous problem? Do you want to build a lifestyle business? It depends a little bit, right? But what I would try to find is some narrow use case that it's present and important to a large enough amount of people, but not too many for it not to become too competitive, and go build a killer product. There's like, I don't know, so many things. Like we have a Slack bot on the company that automates, and it's all built on top of our infrastructure, that automates all of the procurement that we do in the office. So it has program guardrails on how people can spend money, but allows employees to ping this Slack a bot on DMs and be like, we need toilet paper. Give me Red Bull. Order lunch. Send the Uber Eats link and make sure I follow up with everyone so that by 3 p.m. it's done. And it saves us from having to being, the office manager to do all those things, and so efficient.
We'll
There's
break
like
that down
this,
a little
yeah.
bit. So you've built an agent with Slack for your team. So I'm on your team and I want to go get lunch. I ping this channel, and what happens technically after that?
Yeah. So what we do is, and this, by the way, we built in like 2 hours. It's not like, it's like the time you waste in a week doing those things. There's like so many automations like that are possible. So what happens in the backend is, there's the agent is an entity. It has a wallet. The wallet is pre-funded. It is trained on the things that it can and cannot do. Some of the things are programmed into, like all of our wallet infrastructure are smart accounts. They allow you to embed logic and policies inside of the contract itself. So even if the AI were to hallucinate, the agent cannot go and do stupid things because it's blocked to some extent by the contract. And so then we instructed it with some of those rules, like, okay, per person, you can only spend this much. These are the only vendors you can buy from, categories of articles you can buy from. And this you train via, some of it via LLM. Is like really, really simple. And so then when someone wants to buy something, we have a checkout API that the agent can call autonomously and with a specific SKU they want to buy. It has like inventory search, so you can find which specific item you want, and then it goes and it settles instantly with the merchant. And so in this case, it can buy from Amazon, it can buy from Shopify, and so on, and delivers. And then it has notifications that push you whenever the item was delivered, and so on. This is one random example, but think of all of the painful things that we have to do, like the booking flights. Like we have one, like this we have to automate that. We have, every time we do an offsite, we do 3 a year, and the planning is obviously like pain in the ass. You can just like have like the rules, be like, okay, from flights from Europe to the destination, you can only spend this much. Each person can only buy one. And then the agent can go and they can help you search the flight. They can help you execute the transaction. We don't have yet, but we'll be adding like refunds and change in flights and stuff like that. And so there's like so much. So if I was an aspiring entrepreneur, I would look at like one niche, one problem like this, that it's replicable, that a lot of companies are facing, or users, and build an automation, and you'll kill it. There's so much savings that can be produced by some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think about the recent moves of folks like Brex and Ramp starting to really get serious about stablecoins, and just what you described being core tech into platforms like that for spend or employees. Like, I would love to go into those rooms to hear what those types of companies are building and thinking. It's really interesting. Okay, so take us into a couple of these specific launches you've had lately. You mentioned MoneyGram. Maybe we can start there. Ultimately, I want to how you guys are thinking about mainly the go-to-market use cases that you feel are the most reflective of the kind of deals and the kind of launches that you want to do more of. If the MoneyGram is one that we can call out first, that's great.
Yeah, sounds good. So maybe let me list first where we're seeing activity in the market, and then I'll dig deeper into one or two. The segments where there's the most activity are remittances. The use case for cross-border payments is so obvious. The improvement in cost structure, in speed, not for all corridors, but for many corridors, and the opportunity to bank the recipient. Right? You create a digital wallet for the user on the other side, and then you provide them all sort of embedded financial services from cards to, investing, yield, access to dollars, and so on. There's a race now to capture that recipient in emerging markets. All of these companies now, they can deploy financial services in emerging markets all around the world. And those customers who before didn't have access to these services, now everyone is competing for them. And it's such a big market. It's like billions of people that can be tapped into. And so all folks you have two things happening in parallel. On the one hand, you have large companies with a lot of distribution who can, like this, suddenly turn on account balances, payments, and so on, and monetize in many different ways. On the other hand, you have localized players who are building like very niche and specific neobanks and products for specific jurisdictions. And there's going to be like an interesting clash of both. And, we'll see where the map ends up becoming. But that's, I think, what's happening on the remittance side, which touches a little bit on the neobank and consumer fintech side as well, because these remittance companies are building like neobanks and so on to some extent. Where you're seeing a lot of neobank activity basically emerging all over the world. So a new generation of Revoluts, of Chimes, of Venmo apps, etc. Then you have a lot of activity on payroll as well, and increasingly more remote and global workforce. So many transactions are international, and they can be made so much more efficient. Better for both the employer, who doesn't have to provide so much doesn't have like so much working capital stuck in transit whenever they want to send money. Like when we have to pay people in some of our folks who are internationally, we have to send money sometimes like 2 weeks ahead of time. That is 2 weeks of money that is not earning yield, that is stuck in transit, that neither us nor the recipient have. It's just like floating there in the ether, and it's so inefficient. And so it really helps optimize a lot the treasury. It also helps a lot, obviously, reduce fees, improving speed, and then these payroll companies then can also do a lot of things on the recipient. So you've seen a lot of announcements with Deal and a lot of other companies that are doing a lot on the payroll side. So we talked about remittances, neobanks, payroll companies. Then you also have quite a bit of activity on telecommunication companies, many of whom already had mobile wallets. And so now they can build supercharged 2.0 wallets with many more things, more global, less operational overhead, etc. You see a lot as well in like marketplaces and commerce. So any marketplace where there's cross-border money movement, or marketplaces where the marketplace wants to bank the seller, tends to be more the seller, and offer them financial services. There's a lot of activity there as well. And then like PSPs, they're all thinking about like stablecoin settlements, stablecoin payouts, and so on. That is at the highest level, I think, like the segments where there's the most activity on stablecoins today. Well, sorry, there's also like B2B neobanks, treasury platforms, and things like that. Maybe like a subset of neobanks, but that is more like B2B. Some use case. Yeah, you go, sir.
Yeah, I just would love to double click on, like, tell us the story, really, how something like MoneyGram came to be. Would love to understand that process and how that deal happened, what you're doing with them. Bring us into that story a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And there's only so much I can share out of like how things happen because of confidentiality reasons, but I can talk about the use case and what is public. And so remittances are historically complicated business that requires a lot of liquidity, that it's, payments go through SWIFT and corresponding banks that are expensive and inefficient. And so in the historical flow, user goes to a CVS or a Walgreens or some physical location, they provide cash, it's sent through those rails, and then on the destination, the user goes and picks it up at a similar physical location. And so the new MoneyGram flow, you collect the cash in whichever method you want, but then that money is converted into stablecoins, is delivered to the recipient, who then gets it into a digital wallet. That wallet looks like a normal FinTech app. The user, nor the sender, nor the receiver need to know there's stablecoins anywhere in the flow. They just get a message, hey, you received $200, click here, you open it, and suddenly, magically, instantly, there's $200 in your account. And then from there, you can basically give them all sort of financial services that are very good for the user, but also good for these type of companies who now can unlock new revenue streams. From there, now the user can get a card, they can spend it, they can get yield on the deposits, they can cash it out if so they wish, because they actually need the physical cash in their bank account or a physical location, and that would go through the traditional flow. But the initial step in is you get it into the wallet. And so it is so transformative. Like maybe the listeners in the US, probably many, having in emerging markets, But to those who are there and like have seen it, it's like a paradigm change. The amount of high quality, sophisticated financial services that will become available for billions of people for the first time in history, the new ability to save, to build your net worth, to invest, to access a dollar, like a currency that is not losing 20% of its value every year. It's so powerful and it's going to be like so disruptive. I'm a bit scared of implications on dollarization, impact on local monetary policy, and spirals of devaluation that may occur as a result. But in the core is so impactful and good for the world. It's really exciting.
Yeah. When you think about I'm on the website for Crossmint right now, and I'm kind of poking around and really getting a sense of the core options you have. And you mentioned cards in that answer, and the really where spending comes in, especially within these emerging markets. How, and just given the fact this season is sponsored by Rain, we've been working with them really closely on this season. Talk a little bit about the relationship with Rain, what that unlocks for Crossmint, and maybe more so just the thoughts around cards and spend, maybe in these emerging markets that you guys are in, and how that plays with Crossmint and how you work with a company like Rain, for instance.
Sure. So Rain is a close partner of ours. We have, I don't know how many already live customers together. There's no point in having a stablecoin balance if you can actually not use it. And the reality is that today, virtually no merchant accepts crypto payments yet. It's coming. The PSPs are going to unlock that. Until then, you need some type of mechanism for people to spend their stablecoin balances. And so Rain is providing a very critical part of the stack in the stablecoin world that actually gives utility to these accounts in a world that if not, it would just like be useless. Not useless, right? You can still store the US dollar, you can get yield, you can invest it, but you can actually not use it in the real world. And for stablecoins to truly kick in and become mainstream, you need actual usage of, a consumer is not going to put funds in there just for the sake of it. They need to be able to spend it, right? And so the way we work together is by having Crossmint and Rain prepackaged. You can basically just build that entire neobank experience where we help with the on-ramps, the off-ramps, the wallet infrastructure, the stablecoin orchestration, stablecoin issuance if needed, and so on, whereas Rain provides that card component to it. So actually, the money can be used.
It's amazing. I agree. That's what gets me so excited about Rain too. It feels like if you use, it's like the final piece in some ways of a really big puzzle that makes a lot of what is being built behind the scenes frictionless, and really you don't have to have a conviction around stablecoins or crypto or whatever to care about it. It just works because that utility in the middle with the card is serving to really take that away. I mean, you know this, I spent years at Coinbase convincing merchants to accept crypto and working with them to do so directly. And you're right, like we're still not there. We're still not in a position where the infrastructure makes enough sense. But what merchants do want is to open up new revenue streams, to get new customers in there, new tender types, but they don't want to change a lot. The PSP, like the comment around PSPs being like the core missing piece there, I think is pretty strong. I'm excited to see more big payments companies that own those merchant relationships start adopting and integrating, hopefully what will be like native stablecoin rails, sort of like what PayPal is doing, for example, with PiUSD, and giving merchant access to those stablecoins without them even knowing necessarily that they have those balances native in stables. That's when it gets really exciting. So with these large enterprises that can't be named yet, what are the things that you feel, as you know, these big companies that choose to work with certain companies, they take a long time to evaluate which infrastructure makes sense. They I'm sure have taken a very long time to make the decision to work with you guys in Rain. What do you think were the things that gave them the confidence to work with Crossmint specifically? Like what were the key selling points that you feel like made those deals close and made those really exciting use cases around the corner? What were those specific features or things that you found were really important?
You could be surprised on speed. I'll reply to the question in a second, but there's true that there's some companies that go through very long RFPs, maybe spend 6 months on vendor due diligence and so on. There's others that where the market is at today, it's insane. We had one company, very large. They move in the dozens of billions a year, reach out to us on Thursday. They started building on Sunday. By Friday, they had a POC live in production that worked, combining both us and Rain.
Wow. So within the week, they had from first call to in production something working.
In production, not launch live. That obviously a lot of polishing around the edges, communications and things like that. That maybe like a couple of months. But to have like the actual product built that works, ready to start moving a lot of their volume through in a week. They build the product from first call to having it. So things move really fast.
What is it like now as you're co-founder of this company? You've been in the trenches here for years where that hasn't been felt, where you've been meeting with companies and that sense of urgency or the feeling that I think you are seeing right now, like that wasn't always the case. What is it like now as you sit in this position? You're scaling this company, you're working with some of the biggest companies in the world in payments who are flocking into this conversation and ready to do things like within the week. What is that like as a builder, as a founder, compared to, given you've been at this so long?
It feels nice.
Let's just leave it at that.
From going on a world a couple of years ago, right? You get into the room and they're like, oh, stablecoins, what is that? Like, we don't want to touch it. What is that? Scam, crypto. To now, which is like people knock on your door, everyone wants to learn more, everyone's ready to start building. It feels nice. I'm really excited. Like on the one hand, it's like incredible that finally the world realized how important this technology is and how quickly it's going to disrupt everything. At the same time, too, there's still, when a lot of these companies think of stablecoins, it looks like this cloud of like concepts and ideas that you don't like. It sounds like nice. It sounds very useful. You see everyone doing things with it, but you don't really know what you can use it for and when it makes sense versus not. And maybe going back to your previous question of like why maybe some companies decide to work with us, comes with that. We help demystify, we help land, we help you figure out like what exactly is this within your specific context. Where does it make sense? How? And then part of the reason why some of these companies are able to move so fast is we have a team of forward deployment engineers. We sit with them on the room, even in the daily stand-ups, and we help them. Like what we sell is basically speed. Companies want to launch this fast. They feel they're behind. There's many things that they have to figure out, from hiring a team of blockchain engineers to determining the use case, the right architecture. Do we do custodial or do we do non-custodial? Like when does it make sense more one or the other? Can we launch in this specific jurisdiction or not? All of these like 10 different providers like treasury, stable orchestration, embedded wallets, AML screening, travel rule, RPCs, indexers, tokenization. How do you make sense of all of that and put it together to actually be able to deliver a product as quick as possible? That's what we solve for. We solve for speed. We help that company, in a week have a product that combines those 10 things into a, fully integrated consumer product that just works. And so that's what we deliver with like enterprise readiness, like, compliance and proper licensing to deliver those services. That's what we offer. It took us a long time to get here, like 4 years of grinding, of building the entire platform when the world didn't believe in the use case and the technology, and now we're reaping the benefits of it.
So you're forward deploying, you're in the trenches, you're building quickly, you're answering those questions. What are some of the things that these big payment companies and those who are urgently trying to get on base, what are the common questions or maybe misconceptions that you're seeing, or struggles or common problems maybe? I think what I love about this show and this podcast is it can really scale knowledge and it can scale understanding. It's just why we want to be doing this and asking questions like that. Like what if you have, an ideal prospect or someone who's thinking about building, like what would be some of those key things that you would want to impart on them in terms of how they should be thinking about this, common questions that you hear from them? Yeah. What are some of those common things?
I think there's two. The first one is there's a lot of misconceptions around custody. What is custodial? What is non-custodial? And why you may want to use one or the other. Within crypto native applications, I would say that over 80% of them, they're illegally engaging in money transmission sometimes without knowing so.
Can you say more on why? Say, I agree. Say more on why you believe that.
Every day, at least twice a day, someone comes and they say, I want my wallets to be non-custodial, but I want to be able to sign transactions on my own from my server. And maybe I like this provider because they allow me to do that. If you can move money on behalf of your user, you're custodial. Just because you name a wallet non-custodial doesn't make it non-custodial. And so many, especially among crypto native companies, they just have setups that are clearly and flagrantly custodial and engaging in money transmission. Now, regulators today, they're not going around and exploring and finding people.
Why not?
But they will. They just have, I think, like bigger fish to fry today. But some of these things come done retroactively. I would just be careful if I'm building that to make sure that what I'm doing is compliant, because there's ways to achieve the exact same thing pretty much, but doing it right with an architecture that doesn't have the developer engage in money transmission, that reduces risks. And so that's one.
And that's
Another one
specifically
also,
a comment you think to the stablecoin or the crypto stablecoin native crowd, where they're serving an audience that might be DeFi native or like very forward on this idea of own your keys, own your crypto, own your wallets. And is that priority that you're hearing for non-crypto native or user native?
Not only. I think in those is particularly acute because they many times don't have the right team in-house of like legal compliance maybe, or like counsel to help them assess the risk. But in those scenarios, there's a lot. Telegram bots, pretty much all are custodian. Pretty legal. There's ways to do them right, but today we're not seeing that. Most are doing things.
Would you say that there's, as tools get better, as compliance infrastructure improves, as more volume starts going through these pipes and the risk goes up and the laundering gets bigger and the damage gets bigger potentially, what do you think is going to happen in the next couple of years in terms of that space and where compliance and investigations will be going?
There will be enforcement. There will be a lot of issues. And the problem, I think, that in a lot of these companies, especially the bigger ones, they may face a lot of scrutiny and some like fines or potentially even worse. I think there's also not a lot of like checks and balances as like sanction screening and like travel rule compliance. And you have to have certain checks and balances if you have like a interface that allows users to store a balance, even if it is like non-custodial or so it's claimed. Even in those cases, you need to have some type of like at least some level of compliance overhead, and I think like that's completely overlooked across the market. And like the number like of people doing things right, it's probably less than 10%. It's like really bad.
Less than 10%.
Probably. Now,
how much of that 90% do you think is ignorance and unawareness versus intentional? I'm putting you on the spot here. We didn't plan on talking about this, but I'm curious.
No, it's fun. I think it's something that should be talked about more because it's very important. And the moment that a lot of these things start to, like, it affects the sentiment on the industry, right? Like when FTX happened, like the whole world saw the entire industry as fraud.
Yeah.
And I think like here you will also see like we want to build things right. And the thing is that you can do things right. You can do things right with the same level of UX, but there are certain things you have to do that people aren't doing right now. And I think that some of it is like intentional disobedience. Maybe, I don't know, a third. But even in Soul, I don't think like people realize the magnitude of what they're doing. And now there's another problem, which is most architectures today in the market, they're very rigid. Once you launch, changing that architecture is extremely complicated. You have to create new wallets. You have the users go and manually approve a transaction to move all of the assets from that wallet to another wallet. And in the interim, you remain non-compliant. And so it's like people are doing things the wrong way. They're locking themselves in that architecture that is going to put them in the spot later, instead of taking a step back and spending 3 hours more thinking about it, setting up yourself for success. And so part of that is also what we help a lot of companies think through these like regulatory and compliance trade-offs. There's another one, which is like, and this applies more to enterprise fintech. There's a lot of companies that they still, especially their legal teams, their leadership, haven't spent sufficient time maybe understanding the trade-offs between non-custody and custody, like voluntary custody and like proper or non-custody. And I think there's still, like the world is going to non-custodial models for the most part. There's still some percentage of large enterprises who are scared of non-custodial models. And I think they do so oftentimes because of information asymmetry, that they don't understand that there's no UX trade-offs anymore. You can have the exact same UX if you use non-custodial or custodial. You can do account recovery in different ways. If the user loses access to the account and need to access it, you just have to sign it with your email. It's basically the same UX. And the upside that non-custodial models have are significantly larger. in terms of regulatory arbitrage, in terms of progressive onboarding. If it's custodial, the user has to KYC in moment zero. Pre-generating wallets and sending balances is a little bit harder. There's a lot of things that I don't think, or like vendor lock-in maybe was another one. But, with smart wallet architectures and things like that, which is a lot of what we do. Like if you use Crossmint and you don't like us, in 2 weeks you can leave. And you can do that in like an afternoon. It's not like you have to go through this migration exercise. Happy to explain more at some point on how actually we're able to achieve that. But
what was the second one? So you said custodial, non-custodial is the first misconception. Was there a second that we missed?
Yeah. So give me a second. We went into a rabbit hole and I'm going to sleep deprived. I slept 2 hours today. What was the initial question actually?
When you're talking to these big organizations and really the things that you're helping walk them through and the questions they have or the misconceptions they might have toward things, you said there were two key things.
The second area where still I think there's a lot of education needed in the market is like most of these companies, like they don't have a team of blockchain engineers, of people who are crypto native, who understand all the terms, all the nuances. What is staking? What is Ethereum? There's like so much terminology. What is an RPC? There's like so many things that one needs to know to be able to build. And our core philosophy as a company is to make blockchain disappear. The user doesn't need to know there's blockchain. The companies don't need to know there's blockchain. They don't need to spend 6 months hiring a team to then hopefully be able to start to build. Anyone, they can just call an API that has like zero crypto terminology and be able to start building. And so I think those are like the two areas where we've been helping and spending the most time on.
That's awesome. Time flies. So as we round out this conversation and close here, we've talked about MoneyGram, agentic commerce, the journey of Crossmint, some of these big launches that are around the corner. Obviously, I know you can't say who these people are, but what do you think changes after that news is public? And maybe when people listen to this, it already will be. What do you think? It seems like a big moment for the company and the last few months of rapid urgency and companies coming to you guys. I think we're entering a really exciting phase of being able to see what you guys have been building for a few months. Like what would the message be to the market around where you're going next and what these types of big launches will do to your business moving forward?
Yeah.
And where do you like longer term see the company going? What would be the final kind of vision that you would cast for?
I think the core message is if you're a fintech company and you're not already building with stablecoins, start now, or you'll be too late. All of your peers are building, and there's a risk of getting stuck with an uncompetitive product if you're unable to move fast enough, especially if you're working on embedded finance, on cross-border payments, or any other adjacent part of fintech. And if you want to do so, then we're here to help accelerate that so that you can move faster. We have, obviously, I think the launch of MoneyGram was pretty important for us. I think it inspired a lot of other remittance companies to reach out, and now we're helping many of them go live. There's a lot of other use cases. There's one that I'm particularly excited about that perhaps by the time the podcast goes live, it's already live, and if not, it will be soon after with a government. That is the absolute most incredible application of stablecoins that I have ever seen. And I think it's going to absolutely blow people's minds.
What is the use case really cool for the government? What are they trying to do? Without naming what government it is. Like what is it like?
Hard to say.
Government? Yeah, okay. You can't go any closer with government NDAs, I guess. Yeah, well, that's exciting. I'm hopeful to hear more about that.
It's very cool. We had a meeting yesterday with the president and the cabinet where we were like testing the flows, have them, try and see the product, and everyone's minds were blown. I think it's going to be really cool.
That's awesome. What's it like working with people in a profile like that? Like being on a call with a cabinet or a president of a country? Like, what is that like for you?
To me, it's just like insanely inspiring. 4 years ago, we were doing credit card checkout for NFTs. The use cases were like, they were cool at the time, but it's not something that necessarily you wake up in the morning and you're like, we're having an impact in the world. People's lives are touched. This makes real long-term sense. It's not mission critical. It's like fun stuff, but it's not like truly core to the world. Today, the use cases that are getting developed on top of this technology are like literally changing people's lives. They're cool technically, they're really cool philosophically. The impact is insane. And when I find myself in a room like yesterday with the cabinet and the president of a country, like I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this is so cool. And I'm just really excited for everyone. Like today, like these days, you're seeing, all of our peers win, like, all of these use cases going live, all of this activity in the market is just like, I'm really happy. It's really cool.
Well, Rodri, thanks for all the work you're doing. I'm personally very excited for the coming weeks to see more of what you've teased here in this call. And it seems like the best is yet to come for Crossmint and what you're building. If there's anything we can do to help amplify that story, work with you guys, it would be really fun.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.